All right, hello, and welcome back to another episode of the Chase Thomas Podcast, where I'm still the aforementioned Chase Thomas, coming to you live from Knoxville, Tennessee. Everything School HQ. Julian Phillips, a plus 45 against Alcorn State tonight for the men's basketball team. The best defense in the nation. Everything School HQ. I was on campus. It was electric. The vibes were immaculate. Tennessee basketball also back. Tennessee baseball sending out hypes for like 70-something days away. Tennessee's going to the Orange Bowl. Hendon Hooker might go to New York. Everything is coming up. Tennessee Volunteers. Matt Green, how are you?
For those of you just tuning in for the first time, this is not a Tennessee Volunteers podcast. I would say Tennessee is trending in the right direction in most athletics, except for that 2022 SEC championship. That went to none other than the Georgia Bulldogs. First time since 2017, SEC champs. Always feels good to just win the SEC. I don't think other conferences really understand what an accomplishment it is just to win the SEC.
It just looked, LSU fans really took over in that second half. You could tell that there was just so much purple and gold that I don't know what happened. No, I'm just kidding. I will say, turnout didn't look great. I know a lot of people who went, but there were a lot of empty seats for this one. This was the least interesting SEC title game since when for you, Matt Green? Because we all knew Georgia was winning this football game, and just LSU being the worst West representative since I don't even know. This was, and I think we talked about it where I was this was the least interesting conference championship game unless you're a Georgia fan on the weekend.
Yeah, I think you got to go back to probably, I want to say Arkansas 2006 against Florida for the last, and even they were probably top 10, I want to say, for the last SEC West team that really wasn't playing for anything.
Lost three games going in.
Yeah, exactly. It's usually the team in the West is not only favored to win it, but definitely a step away from the playoff or the BCS championship, whatever it was. But yeah, it was. You probably have to go back to the back-to-back Florida appearances under McElwain for just really obviously Florida was new under McElwain, so it was a new team to see at the time. But it's what were they ranked 15 to 20th in both of those games, and Alabama won them pretty handedly. For the most part, there's been some of these games with Georgia under Kirby Smart that they've been a pretty big underdog when it comes to 2018 versus Bama or 2019 versus LSU. But the scenario still existed that this is the number 4 team, and if they win, they're in the playoff, even if people didn't really give them that great of a shot to beat the favorite team from the West. But yeah, so it was a weird situation from that perspective. But you'd have to say Georgia pretty much dominated this game for the most part. They had all the lucky bounces.
Well, hold on. Let's save it. Let's save the Georgia.
Sorry.
We'll get into Georgia LSU quickly. Yeah, you're ready to go. You're fired up. But it was a fun weekend by and large. There was a lot of good football. You're not going to believe this, but TCU played another close football game. Who could have ever foreseen that TCU would play a game close? Came very close to LSU covering. I felt good about that one going into the weekend, and they only missed it by 3 points there at the end. We had some questionable field goals by Jeff Brom because he may have had the under for Purdue, Michigan. Some weird late game field goal calls there, but by and large, a great college football weekend. Matt Green, what was the highlight for you outside of the Dogs? How was Mama Green? Hello, Mama Green. Jake Green. Anything new there? Any insight in the pod?
No, man, nothing new from that perspective. But yeah, it's always a good weekend to get together with the family and watch the Dogs win an SEC championship. But
Buffalo Chicken did make an appearance?
Not this weekend. But yeah, just having a whole weekend, having Friday, a couple of conference championships on Friday, then all day Saturday. It's a pretty solid weekend.
I'm not going to lie. I felt really nervous going into the weekend when USC went down because I was I wanted to do it and I didn't do it. And then North Texas goes down to UTSA and I was like, oh, crap. This is it. I'm really going to go down. This is where I lose it. I'm really going to go down. But my Toledo Rockets, I think, came up clutch for me this weekend. You backed a team that has not won the ACC since 1980. That bitch you. Sir, let's give the people what they want. Who won at the end of our season-long picks against the spread and picks overall, sir?
So it was a great season, I will say that, just to start things off. But yeah, I think both of our upset picks in the conference championship weekend, they kind of canceled each other out. So it's not necessarily too regrettable for either of us. They were both hot takes, you know. You gotta put one out there every once in a while.
Yeah.
But on the weekend, sir, you went 5-5 overall, 3-7 against the spread. Your fifth losing record against the spread in the last 6 weeks. You were off to a good start this year, but kind of fizzled at the end of the year. But not going to mention anything about the Tennessee Volunteers.
That's enough. Yeah.
The parallels there, no. But overall, you did hang on. Oh, and myself, I was 6-4 overall and 5-5 against the spread. So if you are doing the calculating in your head, as I think you are, you finished one game ahead of me.
I knew I did.
I
told my wife, I was like, I think I beat him by one. If my math's correct, I think I beat him by one. And it was the Toledo one where I did the fist pump. The Toledo game, I was like, duh. Like when I saw them go up 17-7 late, I was like, absolutely. Ohio never won the MAC. Not doing it today. Toledo, many are saying the Tennessee of the North. Very much excited for my Rockets taking care of business and giving me the dub.
But yeah, I was 2-0. You were 0-2 on Friday night.
I thought it was in trouble.
But yeah, so I finished 156 on the season overall, one game back from you. Against the spread, however, on the season, I was 80, 71, and 5. And that was 9 games up on you. You were 71, 80, and 5 on the season. So, and then Zeus, like we said, 9-5 with his home dog of the week on
Good
the
year for Zeus.
Excellent year, without a doubt. He went 6-6 last year. So it was a huge improvement in that second year. You know, that's really where you see the biggest improvement, year 1 to year 2. So
this would be year 3.
That's fair, but I don't have the stats for year. I don't have the stats for year 3. So, was Zeus doing the home dog? Was it a full segment the whole year? I think it was like kind of a half baked thing.
Yeah, I don't know. I'd have to go back and listen to a 2020 pod. That whole year was just half baked.
It's like the Georgia-Florida rivalry. You know, you can't even really. They don't even agree. Both sides don't agree what year the rivalry actually started. So we got the stats back to 2021. So that's the official date. That's all we got.
I like it. Matt Green, before we get into what actually happened over the weekend, and we'll get into on the Wednesday show our takeaways on the coaching carousel. I mean, we got Dion getting the Colorado job and being introduced and talking to the team, and we'll see what happens there in the coming days in the portal. He already got like a 5-star kid from IMG who's in like the 2025 class who just like tweeted out Deion Sanders or something like that. And you're like, all right, he's going to do all right. Like we've said this in the pod. Deion he was out there for all these programs. It's like kids want to play for Deion. It's just, don't ever think this. Just hire Deion Sanders. But TCU, who said that should hire him, they're all right. Sonny Dykes has done a really good job, so they may be okay there too. But I don't know. A lot of teams are going to be kicking themselves with Deion Sanders, especially in the immediate eligibility era of college football. It's just I would not be surprised. Colorado going bowling in year 1 would be that's all I'll say on that one. Is I think they're going to be pretty good right away.
I agree, but I kind of feel like Deion could have held out for something better than Colorado. Like, yeah, they have some tradition there in the 90s, but it's been a while since Colorado was relevant at all. I feel like an SEC team in the next year or two would have been willing to.
My prediction, I'm still saying, and I said this 2 to 3 years ago, he's the man who replaces Saban. Like, I am 100% dead certain that he is the one who gets the Saban job.
That's bold. That's bold.
I mean, think about it. You have to be, and being the guy who replaces Saban, and also if you want Alabama, you have to have an ego, right? Like, that's just part of the deal. If you want to be the head coach at Alabama, it's like running for president, where everyone who runs for president has a humongous ego. You have to be some level of narcissist to want to be the president. Like, that just comes to the territory. Deion Sanders is one of the ones who would be like in this industry who would just not have a problem following Nick Saban. Like he's totally comfortable in his own skin. He would not get overwhelmed by following the greatest college football coach of all time. I think 99% of coaches would. I think it's a job that most will not want. I don't know. I think Deion he makes the most sense. They do the Aflac commercials together. The recruiting would stay top notch at Alabama, transitioning from Saban to Deion. I would not be surprised. Like that is my pick. It's been my pick for a while. I think Deion makes the most sense as the guy that follows. Like Dabo's not going to do it. Kiffin's absolutely not following Saban. I don't think many are going to want it, and you have to have a unique personality and a very, very strong one that's not easily wavering. And Deion checks all the boxes of someone who can actually be the one to follow Nick and not be the least bit intimidated.
Well, that remains to be seen, but we'll see.
Mark it down. December 4th.
I guess he figured he needs to get some Power 5 experience. That Jackson State isn't necessarily enough, but I don't know. I feel like he was creating enough of a buzz that a bigger program would have come knocking sooner rather than later. But it's definitely a step up in the coaching ranks. So yeah, I'll be interested to see. It's been a long time since Colorado was relevant. I'm thinking like Bobby Purify. And like Chris Brown, that was like 2001, 2002, the last time Colorado was. I guess they were good a couple years ago, right?
Mel Tucker had them 10-2, right? What did they get to? 9-3, 10-2.
No.
Mike McIntyre got him close too. What did Mike McIntyre get him to? Was that the McIntyre year?
McIntyre's the one that they had like a 10-win season.
That's
think,
what I thought.
One year.
Yeah.
But I think Mel Tucker was only there for 1 year, just like one bad season. And
were they bad? They went like 9-3 in the Mel Tucker year. 8-4. Am I crazy?
I don't think he would. I don't think so. You can look that up. You looking that up?
I am looking it up right now. 5-7. Yeah, you're right.
And then when was their like last good season?
That might take me a second. Hold on.
Oh, I thought you were just looking Football Reference.
No, you're good. Yeah, that might take me a second.
Not important. But I don't know. Colorado, it's been a while since they were really relevant. They haven't basically been relevant at all since they joined the Pac-12. So I don't know. Maybe this is a good move for Deion, but I was a little surprised.
2016. Yeah.
I was a little surprised when I heard Deion moving to Colorado. I felt like somewhere in like Southeast, especially like Texas, where it feels like he's got like a lot of, recruiting ties and that sort of thing. A lot of roots in Texas. That's why we said TCU last year, but I don't know. Maybe the A&M job opens up here in a year or two, like Texas in 3 or 4 years. Like who knows if Sark has this thing moving like they want. Not that Sark's doing a bad job, but that's just what Texas seems to do these days, is fire their coaches every 3 or 4 years. But I don't know. We'll see what happens with Deion. It's definitely Colorado's going to be talked about more than they've been talked about since the 90s with Deion Sanders at the helm. So it's big for them.
They also recruit California well and Texas well. That's just Deion's bread and butter. Like it's going to be flashy, fun offenses. Like where
does Travis Hunter go?
That's a good question. Because people just kind of assume that I don't know if he follows him to Colorado. I think he can do, like, if you're going to leave, I don't know. My gut, I wonder if FSU reopens. Like, are they okay with that? Does he go back home to Georgia? Please, God, no. Let's hope not.
Come on to Athens, Travis Hunter. Play 2 ways.
They won't do that.
We'll figure out a way. We'll figure out a way to get you on the field.
They won't do 2 ways with Travis Hunter. No way.
I could see it, man. He's supposed to be special. I haven't seen him play at all at Jackson State.
He does two-way stuff at Jackson State, but I'm saying, like, I don't know if that's feasible at the Power 5 level. I don't know if the body can take that.
If you're a baller, you're a baller.
He's not a big dude. He's not a big dude. Very, very skinny, very shifty. Great player, but I don't know if he's a 2-way kind of guy in today's era. I don't think you want to do that and risk it when you have as much upside as he does at corner, but I don't know. We'll see. Time will tell what Travis Hunter does, but it will be interesting to monitor Matt Green. The CFP, it's done. Alabama did not make the college football playoff. And look, we were texting a little bit about this earlier this afternoon, and I don't want to piss TCU fans off because there was a lot of uproar today. There was a lot of back and forth and TCU fans getting mad at Alabama and SEC fans or national media folks. And like, there was a lot of people pointing out that like, it felt like the fix was in, where Saban does the interview, talks about, he's talking about the Vegas line, if they were put up against TCU now. And my whole thing with that is like, what did you think he was like? He's trying to make the case for his team to be in the playoff. Like that, he doesn't have the signature wins. Like the thing he can point to, which is smart because that is true, is Alabama would be favored against TCU. Like, and people rightly pointed out they were favored against Tennessee and they were favored against LSU and they lost both those games. So it's an immediately disproven point for Saban to make, but he has to say something. Like if you're going to do the interview, like what is he supposed to do? I don't know why people get mad at this, where Saban gets asked by ESPN to do a spot or whoever it was. Like, what's he going to say? No, I'm going to decline and not push for my team to make the playoff. Like what? This is my last year with Bryce. Like, why would I not do whatever I can to get in the playoff? Like, that's the whole purpose of the Alabama football program, is to be in the playoff every single year. I don't know. I don't know why there was as much uproar about that.
Mean, when he's Nick Saban, I think everything he says gets a reaction, right?
Yes.
It's taken as gospel. Like when 3 years ago he said, great defenses can't beat great offenses anymore. Then every media personality in college football is like, yeah, great defense can't be great offense. That's what Nick Saban said. It has to be true. Mm-hmm. So it's just every time Nick Saban speaks, people listen. And, yeah, obviously he's going to be campaigning for his team. And it's just also the hypocrisy of it, of just like, I don't know, how long ago was it? 2 years ago, where he's just like, we need to be worried about player safety. We can't be expand the playoffs, whatever, preserve the regular season. And now it's like, maybe we should consider expansion. Like, yeah, I'm sure now that you're not in the top four, Nick, you would like to do that. But I don't know.
There's a lot of coaches too look at it as like the players don't care anymore. I think that's part of it, is the players don't want to play in bowl games, right? Like these non-important games. And I think when you've built the entire sport now around the CFP, and every week is it like who's going to be where are the rankings going to be, I think his point, and he realizes, like, Saban's smart about when he knows, like, this is what, I mean, there are so many different things that makes Nick Saban the greatest coach of all time, but it's like one of the things is Saban kind of reminds me of Tywin Lannister, when he just knows when he's won a war and he knows when he's lost a war, and he knows he knew he lost the defense war. So he made the change. Like, he still believes in his heart of hearts that that was the way to go, and that was a better sport, and that was like the sport that he loved and that he fell in love with. But he adapted. Like, he still admitted defeat, but like he's still going to push if he still believes that there's a chance his way could still work, he's going to push it. But once he realizes it's a losing battle, he's going to pivot, because he still wants to win national championships, that he is driven to win football games, that he's talked about it ad nauseum of like, I hate losing way more than I love winning. And the way to do that is to just, go to the playoff every year, and to have this mindset that like, yeah, I have my beliefs and I have my ideology, but at the end of the day, if the tide is going one way and I'm the last of the Mohicans here, then I'm not going to die on this hill. Like, it's just not worth it. I need to evolve with the sport or I'm going to get left behind. And the sport has moved to a point where, in 2024, we'll have the 12-team playoff. And who knows what the bowl season looks like. I think that's really his main point of like expand, because like everything out, like that just gives more opportunities, and it's just, that's where we're going. So we might as well get there. Like, the sport is going offense heavy. We might as well go full air raid. You know what I mean? Like, that's just the sense I get from him.
Yeah. And at the end of the day, he's campaigning for his team, and he's going to say obviously what he's going to say to help his team. We have to do something about this sport, honestly. With this playoff happening, like, Cade McNamara has now committed to Iowa. He's in the portal. He's committed to Iowa. Like, is he playing for Michigan in the playoff?
I don't think so. No, he's out. No.
So just your backup quarterback?
I think he was out for the year anyway. Wasn't Cade already out for the year?
I didn't think he was out. I thought he was still healthy as the backup, but I could be wrong. But that's my biggest point. People, like, there's this almost just this doomsday talk around college football of just like you're not ready for what you're about to see in the portal. Like, it's just about
November
to be
14th. He was out for this season.
Okay, it's like you're just about to see the most insane portal ever. It's going to be legitimate free agency this off season, and now we're going to add like 3 weeks of games into that month of things going on. It doesn't make any sense at all. And December is when all these kids are moving schools and their high schoolers are enrolling, all this different stuff. and now we're going to put more games on at this time of the year. I don't think we have any idea what we're doing with this sport right now. Like, we have to have a signing day, a transfer portal window. Like, all that needs to be in February or January, like after the season is over. Like, we're in this weird situation where, because of the early signing day, the week after if you're not in a conference championship, the week after the season is over, it's the end of the season. But we still have all these games. We're in this weird limbo period, and we just have to do something about it. And it's just going to be, I can't imagine this transfers going on while playoffs are 3 rounds of playoffs are happening. Like, I just don't know what's like. Are you gonna? Do you have to wait to put your name in the portal if you're playing in the playoff or something? Is a spot now at the place you were going to transfer? Is it going to be not there anymore because you decided to play in the playoff with your team? Like, is it going to be kind of how coaches are put on in that? Oh, well, we prefer you want to coach the bowl game? Well, we'd prefer that you become our head coach before that bowl game. And then they have to choose and dip on their team. Like, I just feel like we're in such this crazy, like, chaotic era. Like, we are not ready. And what we just announced is going to start in 2024. Like, I don't think anyone's ready for this to happen and what we have to do about it.
Yeah, I mean, what I think is going to happen is you're going to see what's happening right now with the portal is not sustainable. Like, we made baby step progress, right? Where it's like you can't just enter the portal at any given time. Like, the fact that this was not always the case is unbelievable, that we're here, that we had to like put 2 windows in and they didn't start off with windows. That's wild. I've heard different theories on what you could do. Like, I still think transferring in conference should be a 1-year automatic. Like, if you transfer in the conference, then you should have to sit out a year. Like, there have to be some.
But what's the logic in that? I mean, why should you be penalized going from the SEC East to SEC West instead of the SEC to the ACC?
Well, think about Steen, the offensive tackle from Vanderbilt, right? Like, he was really good at Vanderbilt, and then Alabama just plucks him. We're like, we need an offensive tackle for the year. Like, we're just going to go and to go from the lower program in the conference.
That's the portal.
Well, what I'm saying is, like, you don't want schools in your own conference to become feeder schools for the bigger fish that can offer bigger NIL deals. Do you get what I'm saying? Like, that's how you lose a bunch of fan interest very quickly. Where if you have a couple years in a row of your best player on a bad team, like if Luther Burden left this year and then Sam Horn left next year, and they all stay in the conference, where like Burden ends up at Tennessee, Sam Horn ends up at like Florida or something, and you're like, what are we doing here? Why would we get our hopes up and like want to invest at all in any of these guys when, if they do get good enough to leave, they're going to leave, and then we just have to start this whole process over again. Like, we have to kind of root against our guys becoming superstars because then they might leave, because you have the Jordan Addison factor, right? Where Jordan Addison was a superstar at Pitt and just left. Like, that was just it. Like, Pitt didn't do anything wrong. They just didn't allegedly, like, they just couldn't match up with NIL. Like, that's just part of it, and he just left. And I'm never like going against the kids, because like they're going what's best for them. That's how it works. Like, do what you got to do. What I am saying is that's why you have people in power to be like, hey, like this is bad for the long-term prospect of the sport. Like, you will lose so much fan interest. Maybe you change it to like, if you go from one Power 5, or you get like a one-time waiver to transfer without penalty, and that's it. I mean, they're getting so much out of this with the immediate eligibility and fighting the waivers, because like Justin Powell was immediately eligible at Washington State, former Tennessee basketball player. He transferred from Auburn, and he's playing right away. So he's played on a different college team the last 3 years in basketball, and you're like, I don't think that's sustainable for the health of the sport. Like, I think you have to have some sort of guardrails back and fold, and I understand that it's going to be really hard to do that. You have to find something to put this up, because you cannot have this much movement every single year, or players entering the portal who are doing well at these schools and then just threatening, not them personally, but people potentially in their circle being like, hey, this school over here is offering this, so we're going to put our name in the portal to get our value, check it out every single. That's just exhausting. Can you imagine like how many coaches are going to be left that are going to want to put up with that? Like, every year we have to do this and like resell our program and resell what we're doing and just talk all of our star athletes or even disgruntled kids back into what we're doing every single year. Like that's not what even NFL teams do. Like you have a contract where it's like you still have a couple years commitment before you have to have these tough conversations. Like it cannot be a year over year thing. Like it cannot be unrestricted free agency for everybody year over year. It just can't.
No, I agree with all that. Are you familiar with the Bundesliga? The German league.
I mean, I know what it is, but I don't watch
league.
it. Yeah.
Bayern Munich is the juggernaut in the Bundesliga, and Borussia Dortmund is another big time club, but doesn't have nearly the money that Bayern Munich has. And I'll never forget several years ago, they're about to play each other in the Champions League final, like the European champion, both of these German teams. And right before the match, it's announced that Mario Götze, Dortmund's like best player, is going to sign with Bayern Munich the next season. And we're just like, it's like the week of the Super Bowl, just like, oh yeah, and Brady's going to be on the other team next year. And it's just like, wait, what's that? It's just, so yeah, in terms of the competitive balance, we're going to have to do something. But I think the biggest reason it's not sustainable is from the high school perspective. Like you're hearing all these different things in the high school recruiting trail of just like teams aren't offering high school players like they once were because they're going to go to the portal instead. They want to get a guy who's been in college for 2 or 3 years instead of a high school kid that may or may not pan out. And it's like, depending on where you are as a program, like that's the better route for you. And then you also are seeing just the raw numbers. I saw a graphic the other day, like the last 3 years combined of the transfer portal, I think about 35 guys or 35% of players from Power 5 schools that have entered the portal have actually landed at another school. Like you're just seeing a lot of guys enter the portal and there's not actually another school that wants to take you. So yeah, you kind of have to protect the kids from themselves at some point, but I don't know. It's definitely a slippery slope. Like I'm not really sure what they can do about it to put the toothpaste back in the tube, you know?
And like I said, not blaming the kids. They should do what they need to do. Go get paid. Go do whatever you got to do. Find a new situation. Like we all job hop. I transferred universities. Not the same as Travis Hunter bouncing around, but like ultimately you want to be able to do what you want to do. And it's not on the kid, especially when coaches are able to do this willy-nilly, and they can do this ahead of conference championship games, BCS games, whatever. Like there's no penalty for them to bounce around. And as long as they can do it, I mean, that's how it should be. But I'm saying as like someone who loves college football and is worried about the future of the sport, it's like, I mean, there is a tipping point where, and like you said, maybe the difference is like we'll eventually reach a tipping point where so many kids don't end up getting picked up that the portal is not as big as it used to be. Where like 5 years from now, there's so much data that programs can show these kids where it's like, you're not going to get picked up. I mean, sure, go check it out, but this is the way it is now, and this is your odds of being a star going somewhere else. You know what I mean? Like the more data we have on the portal that these universities and these programs can show these kids, I think you'll see it shift. And I also heard
from a rules perspective, is that more important to the governing body than the powerhouses poaching from the haves, poaching from the have-nots? I think that's also the Alabama going and getting Jahmyr Gibbs and
right.
the USC getting Jordan Addison and Caleb Williams. It's like, I think that's the kind of thing that would, I feel like, steer some legislation more than anything else, because it's just like this feels like free agency, and this isn't really what college football has ever been.
I mean, look at Trey Burton. Like for every Jordan Addison where it was a seamless transition, there's a Trey Burton. It was worse at Alabama this year than
Jermaine Burton?
Yeah, Jermaine Burton, excuse me.
Yeah.
Yeah, like there's no guarantees. You can make the jump, but there are no guarantees, and the grass is not always greener, but kids, you're an adult, 18 and up, like you're able to do whatever, like if you want to make that jump. But I think there will be more and more data on kids who make the jump and it doesn't go the way that they want to go, and they may have left a good program that could have developed them. And I don't know, I cannot imagine being in that position now with kids. It's more options for them. It's got to be really, really tough, because the window to become a superstar, become a guy who can make a living playing football, is so slim. The margin for error is so finite that like you're putting so much trust in these programs for a very small amount of your time to get to you where you want to be, right? Like it's just, I can only imagine the pressure involved, and they just want to make the right decision for themselves. But it's hard, and there's no easy answer here. But I did hear Bud Elliott on Cover 3 the other day make a good point that I had not considered. I don't know if you heard this too, of like part of the reason I think he said was that the portal is popping like this for this year is because no one saw any of these 2020 kids up close. So that whole class was just like video recruiting, and like you didn't get to go to games, you didn't get to go see them in person, get to know them in the home, all that kind of stuff. That there were a lot of bad fits because you were just taking kids based on some video that you saw, and you didn't really get to know if it was a fit. You didn't get to know really if they were going to work out at your university. So there's a lot of odd fits that have to be kind of that are just going to move out of the program because they bet on what they saw on a couple videos and did not get to recruit the same that they always have. So I think the 2022 recruiting cycle may have caused a bigger craziness in the portal this year is my guess. And I thought it was interesting.
The 2020 class in general just kind of I could definitely see that as a hangover. But in terms of bringing it back to the playoff rankings,
right?
Was there anything that surprised you about the rankings? Did you agree with it?
Yes, I did. I think I mean personally I would still put Ohio State ahead of TCU because TCU lost and that kind of opened it up. But look, I don't want to get people upset. TCU two things can be true. TCU deserved to be in the playoff. TCU is not one of the 6-7 best schools in the country. They're just not. And
based on what?
Look, Tennessee and Alabama, they took care of business. Like their strength of schedule is better. Both of their strength of schedule. So Tennessee was 8th. I think Alabama was 9th in strength of schedule this year. And you go through it.
They didn't take care of business multiple times
Hold on.
during the season.
Bama lost by a combined 4 points to a really good Tennessee team. And why am I blanking? Oh, and LSU, who ended up going to the SEC title game. They had their blowout wins. They took care of business by and large. We saw on both sides of the ball, they weren't Alabama of old, but they still didn't drop the ball. Like the difference with TCU, and I told you this for weeks on end, like they were eventually going to get bitten because they played close with everybody. The good, the bad. They never just dominated anybody. And the Big 12 is a significantly worse conference than the SEC. And Chris Sims made this point, and we'll talk about it when we get to TCU, but like, what do you think TCU does against Tennessee's schedule?
I'm not sure I agree that the Big 12 is a significantly worse conference than the SEC. Like, Alabama didn't play Georgia, so that's the best team in the SEC.
Mm-hmm.
Like, Kansas State is a top 10 team. Like,
are they a top 10 team in the SEC?
I mean, maybe. Are they better than South Carolina? Like, South Carolina is the 4th highest ranked team in the SEC. Like, they were a pretty flawed team most of the season. Is LSU even a good team? Like, they're fine. Like, they're 9-4 now. Like, Georgia just hung 50 on them in the SEC championship. Like, I don't think LSU is a particularly good team. And that was the team that was representing the West this year. Like, the SEC was not just some juggernaut of a conference this year. And TCU, like, Alabama lost 2 games by 4 points. TCU lost 1 game in overtime by 3 points, and they scored on 3rd and goal in overtime. Like, when they reviewed that play, the ball crossed the plane. Like, you could see the view from over top. Like, I don't know what the Big 12 officiating is doing in that game because TCU's your golden goose here. They're the one that are getting you the playoff. I don't know why you're trying to get them to lose, but I thought that was a bad call that forced them to end up going for it on 4th and goal. But that's TCU's one loss. It's by 3 in overtime.
There are only 3 teams top 10 in scoring offense and scoring defense in the country. Who do you think those 3 are?
Probably Georgia, Michigan, and I don't know, is Alabama one of them?
It's Alabama. Alabama's higher in scoring than TCU. They have a top 10 defense. TCU's scoring defense is all the way down at 57th.
Who's Alabama's best win?
That's not what we're doing, though.
If you're comparing Alabama and TCU, it's exactly what you're doing.
Dallas Turner Will Anderson on the edge. Max Duggan was taking a beating in this.
No, I don't care about that. Like it's about their resume. Like, yeah, we all know that they have better recruits.
My whole thing
they have
is
better
I said
players.
Based on resume, TCU deserves to be in. That's what I'm saying.
I feel like that's the end of the conversation.
Well, no, what I'm saying
like
is we can still have that conversation and say like the better games is Alabama or Tennessee in for TCU. Like TCU has no shot against Michigan. Like no shot, none whatsoever.
And I just don't agree at all. Like, why would they have no shot to beat Michigan? Why is Michigan so much better than TCU? Like, the Big Ten has been by far the worst of the Power 5 conferences this year. It's better than the ACC. It's fourth of the Power 5 conferences, in my opinion, this year. Like, Penn State is in the top 10, like, whatever. No one even really knows how good Penn State is. They look mediocre every time you watch them play. Michigan and Ohio State are the only two good teams in this conference. So I just don't know how to value what Michigan and Ohio State did all season versus what TCU did, because I feel like there's a lot of competitive games with a lot of Big 12 teams this year.
10-point favorites. TCU are 10-point dogs. They opened against Michigan. In comparison, Ohio State opened as 6.5-point dogs against the Bulldogs. A better team. What I am saying is if Michigan...
What was Ohio State favored against Michigan?
Huh?
How much was Ohio State favored to beat Michigan by?
Not much. It was what, 3.5?
But 4? They were favored. I think it was like 6 or 7, and they lost by like 20. That's what I'm saying. Like that doesn't matter.
The talent's different. Oh, this is another part of it. The talent's different. Like they're not in the blue chip ratio. They're not there. We'll see. Like they're gonna get they're gonna get beat down. Like if they got Georgia, that game's 40-point game.
I mean, who's the closest team to TCU that Michigan's played all year? Like they don't play anybody.
Penn State, Illinois.
Like Max Duggan is way better than Sean Clifford. Like Max Duggan might be the Heisman winner right now. Like he's at least in the top 3 or 4 of the conversation.
Hold on, do you think TCU would beat Penn State on a neutral site?
Absolutely.
Right now, I don't think so.
They have like a 1,400-yard rusher and Max Duggan, who's Heisman worthy. Like,
wait, who's TCU's best one?
Probably Kansas State the first time around. Maybe Texas, Oklahoma State.
None of these teams are top 10 teams. Tennessee's beaten a top 10 team.
Alabama, I'm comparing them to Alabama.
Yeah.
Tennessee has a better resume than Alabama. Like I don't agree with Alabama being ahead of Tennessee. Like I think it's a slippery slope to project what someone is after an injury. Like I just think
that's what I'm saying. I think that's what happened. If I had to put my money on it, Tennessee would be ahead of Alabama if Hendon Hooker was not out for the year.
Also, you want to put your money on it. If there was an Oklahoma logo next to TCU's name, there's not even a conversation about this. Like they're undefeated and then they lost. Like there's no question. Like this is all anti-TCU bias. Like don't hate on TCU because you didn't think they were going to be there. You know,
I'm not hating on them. I'm saying they're giving us a worse game. So my whole thing is like I care about entertainment. The quarterfinals have been bad or semifinals. I keep calling it quarterfinals. The semifinals have been bad year over year. Michigan and Alabama or Michigan and Tennessee will give us a much better game than TCU is going to give any of them. I am saying TCU is deserving.
Alabama should have taken care of business in Death Valley. And
I'm not disagreeing, but I'm saying if we were looking for the best games possible, I think TCU is like the 8th option for a playoff game. They just don't belong. Like they belong with their resume, but with the talent and what's going to happen to them, it's not the same.
And see, I think this is why the automatic bids are so important for for the playoff format. I think this is why conference championships are so important, is because you play 10% of the teams in all of college football on a given schedule. Like you have no idea. Like Michigan and TCU, did they play one common opponent this year? Like you have no idea who these teams are. Like there's really no idea. And maybe the Big 12 really was a bunch of mediocre teams. Maybe it was a bunch of good teams beating each other, and so everyone ended up with 3 losses. It is the only conference where everybody plays everybody. So, I mean, there's going to be more losses to go around in the Big 12 than any other conference, just on a year-in, year-out basis. It's like you look at Ohio State's schedule or Michigan's schedule, and did they play anyone that was good from the West? Like
TCU is 64th in rush defense. Purdue was 42nd.
Yeah, that's fine. Purdue doesn't have Max Duggan.
TCU is getting their ass kicked by Michigan. Like, just write that in. Like, we are so afraid because it's like sparing the feelings. It's like, no, they belong there based on their resume. What we don't have to do is pretend that they're better than Alabama. What we don't have to do is pretend they're better than Tennessee. What we don't have to do is pretend they're even better than a healthy Oregon. Like, it's just not, it's not reality.
But that's why it doesn't matter.
What I'm saying is,
what
as
college
a college football fan, I want the best
understand.
games, and I want to see, like, if Hendon Hooker was healthy, I would have preferred Tennessee get in, obviously, but without, Joe Milton's not running the gauntlet. Like, that's not happening. Who cares? But Alabama would give Michigan a game. That might be a 3.5, 2.5 point spread and I might even take Alabama in that one. And then we get Georgia, Alabama in the final.
Well,
Georgia,
this is
or
not
Tennessee,
how college
Bama.
Football works. They didn't earn it in the regular season.
Well, this is like a part of the expanded playoff because we could just toss them out early. Like, and I'm not freaking out about this. You can just light the grenade.
This is the worst part about the expanded college football playoff is because we all know Alabama did not have a championship level season this year. Like, it's just we know what a championship level season is in college football.
But if you put them in the playoff, are you damn certain they wouldn't win it this year?
No, I'm not damn certain of anything that would happen. Like, it's
well, no, we're
when you
certain
open
that
it up
TCU's
to,
not winning the title.
You open it up to 12 teams. No, we're not certain of that.
I'm sorry. Are we now going down the pike where we're saying TCU is beating Georgia and Michigan in succession?
They're one of the 4 teams left. They have a chance to do it.
A 0% chance.
Alabama has a 0% chance to win the playoff. No. TCU does have a chance to win the playoff. Like, they're one of 4 teams. How can you not have a chance?
They don't have the players. It's not happening.
I mean, Michigan just isn't this juggernaut. That's just like they haven't recruited at the level of an Alabama or an Ohio State or. But I'm just talking about this team that you just know is going to smash everyone they play. Like,
I mean,
this is kind of a surprise, but it's also kind of a surprise to see Michigan. Like, they don't recruit to this level of like top 2. Where are they in the blue chip ratio? Like, I don't really pay attention to the blue chip ratio. What is that, like 15th?
No,
12th?
It's like, let me see. 13th.
Like, they're not, that's what I'm saying. They're not one of the higher ones.
Well,
so
no,
Michigan
everyone who's in the top 15, you have to be over 50%.
But Auburn and Florida are in there too. So it's like, I take it with a grain of salt. Like, those teams are bad. So it's not really, it's not everything. And so Michigan.
Well, it's everything if you want to win a title. Literally no team's ever won it without it. Like, none. It's never happened.
I mean, it's how long have we had this? For like 8 years? Like, this blue chip ratio.
We could go back to the blue chips. We can still see like who talent ultimately wins out in the sport. Like, it matters.
We haven't been keeping this. We don't have this data for that long to just say that it's never happened. I'm just saying.
Mac Green wants to die on the TCU can win, and
they have a chance. They're in the playoff. But I'm saying Michigan isn't just this team that's just destroyed everyone they've played. Like,
you better keep the same energy when we do our picks.
They barely
pick
beat
TCU,
Illinois.
sir.
You better pick TCU. They barely beat Illinois a couple weeks ago. The Ohio State game was back and forth until they broke a couple 80-yard runs in the final 5-6 minutes of the game. So it's like, I don't know where this is coming from. That like Michigan is just this, I don't know, this.
I mean, they did this thing where TCU didn't do it. They took care of business in the Big Ten title game.
Yeah, because they played Purdue.
Purdue is not a bad team.
5-loss Purdue. Kansas State is top 10.
They had 3. They were 1 loss ahead, like away from being at Purdue's spot.
Kansas State is a way better team than Purdue this year. I don't think.
Are we sure about that?
Especially since Will Howard.
Kansas State has been like this, and with Adrian Martinez, where is Kansas State?
But they've had Will Howard for the last 5 weeks, and they actually look like a top 10 team.
I think they look like top 10.
They'd be in the playoff if they had gone to Will Howard all season, honestly. I mean, if they were a 1-loss Big 12 champion, they could easily be a 1-loss Big 12 champion.
You can't extrapolate Will Howard would have done this for 12 games. No.
I mean, look at who they lost to, though. I'm just saying, like, Adrian Martinez was bad. Like, he was not good. And they've actually been a good team with Will Howard. But regardless, it's been a chaotic season. If a 1-loss Big 12 champion happened this year, or if Kansas State was that, they would have gone to the playoff. And also, 9 in the preseason top 25, 9 of the preseason top 25 finished ranked this year. So, all these preseason rankings and composite talent, people don't know what the hell is going to happen in a college football season. Like, you didn't think TCU was going to be here all season. So, obviously, now we're at the playoff. Yeah, we're still going to continue to doubt TCU, but that doesn't mean they don't have a chance.
It does. No chance. 0. None. Matt Green, you better pick TCU to beat Michigan in a couple weeks. You better do it.
We'll see. I'll have to get there. But
and also, are we
terms
forgetting what you admitted last week where you were like, yeah, we would rather have TCU than Bama, Tennessee, or Ohio State in the spot? You admitted it.
Yeah, but I mean, that's me in terms of projecting of who I think is going to be the most dangerous team for Georgia to play.
Are
but
you
not
more
necessarily
excited about getting
who's got the
Michigan
best
or
resume
TCU in the final?
I mean, if TCU beats Michigan, then it changes how you view TCU. So it's like NCAA tournament. You get to the Final Four.
It's a bye.
If
someone you get TCU in the final, it's a bye. You can start Carson Beck.
If you're playing George Mason in the Final Four, and this is obviously not George Mason, TCU.
They never won the title. Do you know how that story ends, Matt Green?
But my point is, if you're playing George Mason in the Final Four, you're playing a team that just knocked off UConn and whoever in the 2 seed and the 3 seed. Like They
but
obviously
who won the
have
title
to be a
that
good
year?
Team. I think Florida won the title that year.
Another blue blood. What are we doing?
Florida's not a blue blood.
Well, they had talent everywhere. Joakim Noah, Al Horford.
But whatever.
Yeah. Have you noticed that the Stars, generally speaking, went out, man?
I mean, sometimes the teams rallied. Hey, underdog stories happen.
Give me the college football story where that's happened. Give me the one.
Look at the Ohio State. 2002, Ohio State wasn't better than Miami, and they had a gritty bunch of players with Craig Krenzel. They got it done. That Miami team is like the greatest team in college football history.
How many NFL players were on that 2002 Ohio State team?
Probably a quarter of the amount that were on the opposite team. Do you remember that Ohio State team?
Yeah.
They won every game in
and they were in the blue chip ratio.
10 and 17.
What are we doing? It's Ohio State.
You don't know they were the blue chip ratio.
Oh my God! He's now
we don't have that data. We don't have that data.
Noted similar programs: TCU and Ohio State. Oh my goodness.
The point is, Oregon didn't recruit like some of the other big time powerhouses when they were getting to national championships in 2010 and 2014. Like
Mariota.
Yeah, they weren't recruiting top 5 like every year like some of these other teams are. They have a certain system. Ratio, though. I don't think you know that either. I feel like you're just saying things.
2014 blue chip ratio.
Anyway,
let's see.
Going back to the rankings, because I feel like you keep getting off on the side.
I just need you to admit, I don't know why you can't do this.
I don't know why you're hating on TCU so hard.
I'm not hating on them. They deserve, I've been very clear, they deserve to be in, but we also don't have to lie about their chances. That's all I'm saying.
I don't think they're Cincinnati from a year ago. I think they went through a Big 12 schedule and actually, they played some good teams, beat a lot of good teams. And I feel like
Oregon was at 41% in that year.
There you go. Stick that in your blue chip ratio.
They lost. What is the joke? What do you mean? They lost.
Stick that in your blue chip ratio. But
Who won that year?
Nobody thought they would even
Who won in 2014?
Honestly, I guarantee you Auburn probably wasn't in 2010. That was a bad team. They just had Cam Newton on it. But it's not important.
Are we talking about the Heisman, Cam Newton?
Yes.
What was Cam Newton as a never mind. I can't do it. We're going around in circles.
Yeah, exactly. But I just hated that the Boo Corrigan said that there was zero conversation about an Ohio State-Michigan rematch. Because, honestly, if you guys didn't mention Ohio State-Michigan rematch, then you weren't doing your job. You're saying that didn't happen at all. They're just like, did these teams play earlier this year? No one even mentioned a rematch. Didn't even say a word about it. It's because I feel like it's legitimate to just be like, yeah, we thought about it. And these two teams are pretty much equal, and we wanted to avoid a rematch in the first round. Would anyone really disagree with that? If TCU is undefeated right now, it's like there's no conversation. TCU's clearly 3, Ohio State's 4. It's like whatever. But there was a conversation to be had about Ohio State being number 3 because you're sitting here you don't think TCU is better than Ohio State.
No.
And now they're sitting here, Ohio State's 11-1, TCU's 12-1. But you could obviously make the argument on a neutral field, Ohio State's going to be favored ahead of TCU. But I'm cool with it. As a Georgia fan, like I said, I would have rather have played TCU because I think Ohio State's a more dangerous team for Georgia to play. But from just what should have happened in the playoff rankings, I'm cool with Ohio State, Michigan not being rematched in the first round because for all we know, those are the two best teams in college football. And they just played 2 weeks ago. Why make them play again to get to the national championship? Like they might be the two best teams in college football. But they also, the Big Ten is whack this year. And they also could both lose in the first round. So I don't know. It remains to be seen what will happen. I'm not nearly as convinced as you are that Michigan's just going to rout TCU. But Ohio State, Georgia, like I said a few weeks ago, like that's the rivalry that college football has been waiting on. Like it's just been brewing underneath the surface for years, and these two teams seem to hate each other, but they never play. And now we're going to get Ohio State, Georgia, and that is going to be an insane matchup. I feel like that's going to be an expensive ticket in Atlanta.
It is. And look, my pick right now, Matt Green, you're going to hate it. December 5th, I'm taking a Big Ten rematch in the title game.
We shall see.
Following up with Alabama and Georgia, we do a Big Ten rematch the following year.
I'm pretty sure the Big Ten champion 2014 is the only year, I think legitimately ever, that a Big Ten team has beaten the SEC champion. So it's only happened one time ever. So
and that was Ohio State over Bama?
And that was Ohio State beating Alabama. So Ohio State, that team did win their conference that year. It wasn't a runner-up, but what was it? The other year that Ohio State got in as the non-conference champion, that was when they got blanked by Clemson, like 30-0.
Might be.
So I don't know. We'll see what happens.
First playoff, by the way, without Bama and Clemson ever.
See, we didn't need to change the format. We just needed to just let things play out. 4 teams is perfect. Like people talk about the BCS is still a viable option. I don't.
BCS is the best.
I don't think that's a viable option.
This year is the exact reason. You would do Michigan, Georgia.
It would have worked out this year with a BCS.
Yeah.
But the 4-team format just gives you that. Basically, you have to be perfect like you always have been in college football. But you have a little wiggle room. And if you're an undefeated from your conference, you're going to get in that playoff and decide it on the field. It's the perfect amount of kind of leeway and keeping the structure of the sport the same. But yeah, obviously it's going to change here in the new years. But yeah, this is one of the years where it would have worked out. But I mean, you look at it, 2021, Georgia was the 3 seed and they won the national championship. 2017, Bama was the 4 seed. 2014, Ohio State was the 4 seed. Like we've seen 3 champions in the playoff era that weren't 1 or 2. So I feel like that right there says that this system is working better than the BCS would have, but we didn't need to overreact. Like Clemson and Alabama under any format that you ever would have just been dominating that sport for 6-7 years in a row. Like they were just that good. But yeah, now we've changed it, and we'll see what happens moving forward.
Matt Green, you want to talk some stuff that actually happened this weekend?
Yeah, let's talk about it.
All right. We're not going to spend a lot of time, folks, on Coastal Troy. Coastal's new coach is Tim Beck, OC at NC State, and Jimmy Chadwell left because of Liberty, so that was it for him.
That seemed like a surprising move, right?
$4 million for him. It's $4 million a year.
It's $4 million a year?
Yeah.
Wow. Liberty's got that money, but I just would have thought he could get a Power 5 job, but I guess money.
The last Liberty coach
talks.
just went to a Power 5 job at Auburn, so I think he's positioning himself quite well.
That's fair. I mean, he was already positioned pretty well, wasn't he, to get one of those?
I mean, now you're looking at a spot though with them. Are they independent? Or are they they've been independent, right?
I'm pretty sure they're independent.
I think they're joining the CUSA though next year, if I remember correctly. I think they're joining the AAC. They're joining a conference soon, but either way, I think he's going to be on the short list for a lot of SEC jobs. Like he'll be on the short list for Tennessee if that ever opens back up again. He'll be South Carolina when they flame out in a couple years. He'll be on that list. So he'll have options. Jamie Chadwell will be just fine.
Shane Beamer's going to have a statue by then.
That's enough. I can't handle. Oh God. Speaking of Dabo and his comments, walking those back, I cannot wait for Clemson. Tennessee in the Orange Bowl. It's going to be a lot of fun. Matt Green, USC, they go down to the Utah Utes on Friday night. Caleb Williams had F Utah on his knuckles written on his knuckles. Did not go well in this one. Caleb Williams was still awesome all across the board. Played with the messed up hamstring. Had some bonkers throws, and just he kind of cemented that he was the best player, I think, in the country this year. Like, he was doing stuff that you're like, this guy is just uber talented. It's going to be the first pick in the draft following next year if he continues on this path. And, 30-7 in the second half, like, USC's defense just completely pooped the bed. Like, people made jokes about Tennessee and their defense. This USC defense is just awful. And Andy Staples and Ari Wasser made a really good point about this on the post-game show they did on YouTube that I listened to about USC and Utah. And their point, I think, is, I'm curious to get your perspective on this, but I figure you might share it, is that this USC team is just like every other Oklahoma team that Lincoln's had, where it's just this unbelievable all-time offense that should win the title or should be right there, but the defense isn't anywhere close to winning a title. Like, their defense isn't close to being good enough to win back-to-back important playoff type games or beating the physical teams like the Utahs of the world, where it's like, we've seen this movie too many times. Like, Lincoln has to make very tough choices, and he has to get serious about the defense. Like, if that means toning down the offense a little bit, if that means not going after so many of the Jordan Addisons and instead you go after the Harold Perkins of the world, like, you've got to adjust now. Like, you are at USC. You can get, we've seen tons of first round picks like Detroit Palomalus of the world and everything else. Like, there is all kinds of defensive talent in Southern California, but you've got to adjust. Like, this cannot be the norm. And what you did at Oklahoma, like, the lesson that you learned there should be, we have to be a dominant defense too. We have to, like, this softness that they have on defense is just, you're throwing away an all-time great quarterback season again. Like, Caleb Williams was unbelievable in this one. He was unbelievable all season long, and he wasted it. The offense didn't waste it. Your offense was elite. Your defense is so bad, you don't have a chance against the Georgia of the world, the Michigans of the world, the Ohio States. Like, you go down the list. I don't know. I think if you're a USC fan, you're scared. If it's like, man, you better have learned your lesson. You're getting paid a lot of money to get USC back to prominence. And look, you're a game out of the playoff, and that's huge for where they've been over the last decade. But, like, Lincoln, you're going to have to make very difficult decisions, and you have to adjust. You have to do the Kirby thing, which they made. And I think it was a very astute point, where Kirby had to go, I like James Coley, and I kind of want to play the style that James Coley wants to play, but I got to go get Todd Monken. Like, I got to go get a brilliant offensive mind to fix this offense and get us to where I want to be to win a national title. And he did it. Lincoln's got to go get a big-time just DC who's going to fix this thing. He needs to go get his Jim Knowles. He needs to really spend this offseason fixing this defense. The offense is fine. Like, he has to eventually do this, or this is just they're a gigantic waste of our time.
I mean, I think it's fair to say that it looks a lot like it always has looked at Oklahoma, but it's year one at USC at the same time. Like, obviously he knows that he's got to improve the defense. It's hard to ignore that this looks exactly like Oklahoma always looked, but I tend to give him a little bit of leeway just because this was year one. Like, USC wasn't even supposed to be here necessarily in year one. So I feel like it's still a great first season, but you look at Utah, I mean, they were up 17-3 in this one. I start to, like, you can't blame it all on the one play because, I mean, they straight up dominated them for 3 quarters of this game. But the strategy of just going for it on fourth down. So many of these coaches out there that are consider themselves just kind of offensive, analytic-based coaches, and this new thing where you just go for it all the time. I feel like you're seeing that backfire sometimes in these games. Like, USC was really just dominating this game, just completely in control, up 17-3. When they were stopped for it on fourth down, on downs inside, they're just inside field goal territory. From that point on, Utah, like, it feels like it almost like invigorated Utah's sideline. Like, it gave Utah momentum. From that point on, after USC was up 17-3 when they were stopped for that turnover on downs. After that point, USC went punt, 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 touchdown, interception, fumble, end of game. They scored 1 touchdown on their final 8 drives of this game. After that going for it on 4th down that kind of just deflated the control that you had over this game. Also, Utah, after that happened, immediately went down and scored a touchdown, and then scored a touchdown again to tie it at 17 before the half. After that turnover on downs, Utah went touchdown, touchdown, punt, field goal, touchdown, touchdown, touchdown. Like, they were just completely in control of the game from that point on. So they had 7 sacks in this one. Caleb Williams had 12 carries for 21 yards. That's with his 59-yard run he had in this game. He still had 21 yards rushing. I wish we would get rid of, keep track of sack yards, but start to calculate it the way the NFL does, and so we still know what guys' rushing numbers are. But yeah, this was an impressive performance. And also, looking at Utah dominate USC, it feels bigger than just this game. You looked at Utah dominating USC. You also saw a week ago Michigan dominate Ohio State. I think we might be seeing a defensive renaissance in college football right now. You look at the teams that won every Power 5 conference this year. Georgia, number 1 in total defense, number 1 in scoring defense. Utah, number 1 in scoring defense, number 1 in total defense. Michigan, number 2 in scoring defense, number 2 in total defense. Kansas State, number 1 in scoring defense, number 3 in total defense. Even in the ACC, Clemson's one of the better defenses in the ACC. Tulane, number 1 in total defense and number 2 in scoring defense in the AAC. I feel like we've seen so many years of just the offense has dominated this sport that the teams that actually can play defense are starting to take a stranglehold on, and you're starting to see those teams really rise to the top, like in every conference just about this year.
Interesting. But do you think it's a defense thing, or do you think, because I'm going to throw this at you, top 11 in scoring offense: Tennessee, Ohio State, USC, Washington, Bama, TCU, Michigan, Utah, Oregon, UCLA, and Georgia. There's a case that's the 11 best teams in college football this year, right?
That is true, but how many of those won their conference?
Well, Washington didn't get to play in it, and I think there's a case that Washington, at the end of the day, may have been the best team in the conference this year, because I don't think they played Utah, did they?
No, they didn't.
Yeah, so we never got to see that one. That probably would have been the best one to see.
It's almost like divisions matter. Like the divisions actually needed to be there to decide who played in the conference championship. That was the stupidest thing I've ever seen, to just go ahead and get rid of divisions before you've actually made a scheduling adjustment.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. I also wonder, too, Matt Green, if it's like the physical. It's not even just defense. It's like, because San Francisco, there was a really good piece in SI a few days ago from Connor Orr, who covers the NFL for Sports Illustrated. And it was on Jimmy G and the 49ers, right? And the 49ers have built their entire offense around physicality. Like Deebo Samuel, Christian McCaffrey, George Kittle, they all have one thing in common. They're really, really hard to tackle. And they're all... when you look at the metrics, they just break tackles. Like, they are breaking tackles guys. So you don't have to do the big stuff. You don't do the flashy stuff. You just give them the ball, and they're going to get more yards and break tackles. You know that's going to happen. But the reason you build a team that way in 2022 is because tackling is worse than ever. Like, all across the board, defenses are worse than they were years ago. You spend less time focusing on tackling and focusing on that kind of old style that I think what we're seeing now is the Michigans, the Georgias, the TCUs even, Kansas State especially with their physical style, is they're just making you tackle them. They are making you match their physicality, and your teams that can't match physicality with some of these big timers are just getting run about. Utah, extremely physical. Those tight ends just bouncing off USC defenders. That, like, I think that's a big part of it too, is just the teams that are uber physical, and Georgia's the biggest example of that. Where, like, Jalen Carter's just choke slamming the LSU quarterback with one arm and celebrating with the other. It's like, that level of physicality.
He did not choke slam him, sir.
Well, I mean, he just had him up. It looked like he was in the cane choke slam.
He safely placed him back on
what
the
I'm
ground.
saying, you get what I'm saying. It looked like a WWF move is what that looked like. But either way, I think it's a physicality thing even more than defense. Is that fair?
I mean, I think that's fair, but you just look at the teams that are able to play. Like you just kind of said, like there's so few teams that are even able to play good defense that once you play good defense, you separate yourself. So I think I think the sport has always been complementary foot. But that's what I was going to say. The sport has always been you have to have a good offense and a good defense to win. And way more teams are able to have a good offense these days. Like you were literally saying last week, Utah, they don't have a good offense. Like they're like third or fourth in the Pac-12. Like they average like 39 points a game. Like they do have a good offense and they have a good defense to go with it that, okay, well, if they're giving up 17 points a game and scoring 39, well, that's better than the team that's scoring 42 and giving up 27. Like, so I think you've always had to be balanced, and I think you're starting to see more and more teams that are able to actually have a good defense. And like a team like Georgia, maybe you had to change your identity a little bit, and you maybe had to open it up on offense a little bit more. But Georgia's not doing that much different than that many different things than they've always been doing on offense. They're just executing it better, and they're scoring just under 40 points a game and holding the teams to about 10 points a game. It's like if the team can't score on you, it's hard for you to lose. It's like it's one strategy to try to outscore everyone, but when you're actually able to play defense in this modern era, like it separates you even more.
I like it. And I think we'll see more and more of that. I think you're going to see more of an emphasis on defense and physicality. I think there's teams around, like this is a copycat league and copycat sport. People are going to look around and be like, oh, this is what people are doing. We need to place more emphasis on this.
Because even Kansas State, is that where we're going next?
Yeah, we're going Kansas State. Yeah.
Even them, like they had the number one defense in the Big 12, but with Will Howard at quarterback, they were averaging over 40 points a game. Like you have to be able to do both.
Well, Kansas State, they win in overtime. TCU goes for it. Just some really horrible play calls at the end. And I think Max Duggan was in before on 3rd and goal. I don't know how they didn't end up putting him in on that run. I would have put him in. But the call, like I thought it was just, what are you doing? Where you just take the ball out of the guy who's just run for 1 billion miles all day long. You take it out of his hand and just do the Kendry Miller up the middle over and over again, and it just doesn't happen. I didn't agree with that.
So you don't think he got in on 3rd and goal?
No, I think he did.
Okay.
I think Duggan got in. But Kendry, that was a terrible 4th and goal play call. Like that was awful, and I would have just lived and died by what Max Duggan was going to do in this one. And part of me, like, I went away from it where I was like, did he just solidify the Heisman for him? Like that was that kind of effort. And I think if they won, he may have solidified it, but they lost. I don't know. I'm down to the Heisman. You could sell me on 4 right now. You could sell me on 4, and they're all quarterbacks. Who would you guess my 4 that you could sell me on? Like I would not be.
I want to hear your list because I have my own list. So tell me.
Caleb Williams.
Okay.
Max Duggan, Hendon Hooker, and Stetson Bennett. I think if you went with any of those 4, I would not fight you on it. I think all 4.
So you don't include C.J. Stroud in that?
No, I think it's over. Like CJ did not have what was the biggest game of the season he had to play? He didn't show up. Like that was it. Like when you play for a 1-game season, like you're at Ohio State, and also he's hurt because the receiving core and the running, like it's really nice to be the Ohio State running quarterback. It's a really nice gig. I don't know, just a little bit different for me.
No, I agree. I feel like this year should teach us how we need to start reevaluating this award more than anything. It's like Ohio State-Michigan game. This is Blake Corum versus, well, I guess we should go back even further. Hendon Hooker is the clear Heisman winner. Oh, he lost to Georgia. He's out. Ohio State, Blake Corum versus C.J. Stroud. The winner of this is going to be the Heisman frontrunner. Blake Corum doesn't play, and Michigan wins by 3 touchdowns. Oh, okay. I guess both guys are out. Caleb Williams is the frontrunner in the Heisman. Well, they lose. I guess he's out. It's like maybe we should come up with a different criteria. Max Duggan legit had the Heisman performance of the year, like all the moments and everything, just willing his team but they lost. So is he out now too? It's like, what are we doing? Like, we need to just figure out the guy doesn't have to have some Heisman moment, some magical season, need to be ranked in the top 4, like have the best stats, like all this. Like, let's just give it to the best player. Like, let's not overthink this. Like, let's give it to the best player. And honestly, the best player this season is Jalen Carter. For Georgia, he's the best player in college football. He's the best player I've seen. Like, he just dominates, but like he doesn't. I don't even know if he's a first team All-American this year. He might be once they make the awards, but he missed a couple games, and so you've kind of seen, maybe he doesn't have the huge counting stats. Like, he's got more stats than a Jordan Davis put up, but Jordan Davis was just a super valuable player, but like, we just need to figure out a different way to, like, Will Anderson, I feel like he had an underwhelming year. He still had like 9 or 10 sacks, but like, you gonna tell me this guy still isn't one of the best players in college football? Maybe since all these underwhelming offensive players, maybe a defensive player is the best player in college football this year. Like, it's just like Bijan Robinson. Like, what is Texas 8-4? I think Texas went 6-6 the year Ricky Williams won the Heisman. Like, who cares? Like, the guy's a baller. Like, Chase Brown, I almost said Ricky Williams. Chase Brown, Bijan Robinson, either one of them could be the Heisman, and I wouldn't mind. But I 100% think Stetson Bennett this week, I think he got himself an invite to New York City. I think
so who do you think gets invited?
At this point, I don't. You never know how many they're going to invite, right? They used to always do 5. Sometimes it's like 3. I think Max Duggan is a guarantee invite. I think Caleb Williams is a guaranteed invite. I think
Hooker's getting invited.
I think Stetson gets an invite, and I think like Bijan Robinson gets an invite. Like Stroud, I'm glad you brought that up about Stroud, because I was looking at his numbers. He's got 37 touchdowns and 6 picks this year. And I feel like coming into the year, he was my Heisman pick coming into the year, and I felt like him and Bryce Young were like 1A, 1B coming into the year. Like, now, like, NFL, they do what they want to do. Like, he might go number 1 in the draft because he's 6'5", whatever, like prototype. But Bryce Young is so much better than CJ Stroud. You just watch him play, and I'm just wowed every time I see Bryce Young play. And I just feel like I've been underwhelmed every time I've seen CJ Stroud this year. And you look at his numbers. First, the 4 worst teams in the Big Ten, he threw 13 of his 37 touchdowns. And then he threw 9 touchdowns combined against Toledo and Arkansas State. So, I mean, 22 of this man's 37 touchdowns came against 2 G5 schools and literally the 4 worst teams in the Big Ten. And he threw 0 against one of those, against the actual worst team in the Big Ten. But I just felt like in the bigger games, like he just hasn't looked like a Heisman winner, really, even though the stats are definitely a Heisman worthy stats. Like, you look at Caleb Williams, obviously they lost a couple games too, but there's no like down performance for Caleb Williams. Like, both times they've lost to Utah, this guy is absolutely balled out. Like, yeah. And it's even against like some of the G5 schools, it's not like he's just piling up the stats. Like, it feels like Ohio State, I think they dropped like 77 on somebody this year. And it's just, CJ Stroud like 5 touchdowns. It's like, it just feels like they just pad stats. Like, I don't even know how to interpret them. But yeah, I thought that was going to be a hot take from me to have CJ Stroud not in the Heisman ceremony, but you were saying the same thing. But yeah, so I guess if you go 5, I might include Hooker if you go 5. But yeah, I think Stetson, Duggan, and Caleb Williams should all be in there. And it's Stetson Bennett, like, he's not the best player in college football, but he's had a hell of a year, and he's the only one that really fits the formula, right? Like, the formula is a flawed formula, and I think if Stetson wins it, that should show you that it's a flawed formula. But he's on the number 1 team. He's a national champion. He's had some of those highlight reel kind of Heisman moment type plays and stuff this year. But it's like, we all know he's not the reason Georgia is 13-0. He's a good player, but Georgia's loaded with everything around him. So we just need to quit making this such a team success award and having this perfect formula, and just give it to the best player. And I think a guy like Jalen Carter is another legitimate candidate, personally.
Did you see what Aaron Murray said about Stetson on Twitter?
I did see that.
He's the greatest quarterback in Georgia history, and I'm like,
I respectfully disagree, Aaron. Like Stetson has gotten slept on. I'm glad he's now getting his credit, but
classy from Aaron Murray though,
without a doubt. But like you give Aaron Murray that defense that's given up 10 points a game, and Aaron Murray might have a couple national championships.
Yeah, I don't know my gut still says Caleb Williams wins, but I think Max Duggan comes in too. I think it's down to those two, and then they'll invite whoever for there. But I think Hooker gets an invite. I think it's enough that Hooker does get an invite to New York. But we'll see.
I wouldn't really hate on Caleb Williams winning it. I think Duggan, had they won, I think Duggan would have locked it up.
So much pressure, man. And it's the way too that Caleb is just carrying it. And it's a different level of talent when you watch these two. Caleb's just bonkers, man. And he's going to be really, really good at the next level. But in terms of what happened at K-State, though, this was interesting from Tyler Griever. He said, quote, "I don't think Chris Klubnik gets praised enough for the job he's done at Kansas State. He has won at least 8 games in 3 of his 4 seasons, gone 20-16 in conference play, beaten Oklahoma 3 times in 4 years, which is bonkers, taking K-State to the Big 12 title game." Like, this is not a historic, like we talk about the L. Roberson, Michael Bishop years and stuff like that, the Colin Klein, but like we've seen the rocky times in the Kansas State era, and it can get really bad in a hurry. What was his name? Price for a while.
I think there's been a lot more good than bad years. Yeah. They feel like one of those consistent going to a bowl game type programs.
Well, I think he's elevated it. Like, I think they're now just like a perennial force in this conference. And when Texas and Oklahoma leave, man, I think they're just sitting right there. Kleiman is a great, great coach, and he has built a really good thing at Kansas State. So I do think he deserves a lot of kudos for the consistency that he has brought to this group and their identity and bringing his style from South Dakota State, and it's just working totally fine. Like, he is just he's killing it and navigated a really complicated quarterback situation this year really well with Martinez and Will Howard, and Deuce Vaughn soared with him all year long as well. The defense is strong. They know exactly who they are. And when they get that special quarterback, maybe a full season Will Howard next year, you lose Deuce Vaughn, but like, I don't know. Kansas State.
Deuce Vaughn is the X factor. He's gonna be a tough one to replace for them.
Well, there you go. And also, who had TCU being the first team from the state of Texas to make it to the college football playoff?
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's a good point. Not many people. And also, a lot of people hated on Desmond Howard for his preseason playoff prediction, myself included.
Hold on. He had someone else
and he ended up getting just about as many teams as everyone else did.
That's true.
With Michigan. It was still a terrible top 4.
Yeah, he did have Michigan and TCU.
He had Baylor and A&M getting in. He had 2 Texas teams getting in. But yeah, Baylor, who was it? Michigan, Baylor, A&M, and I think Pittsburgh was his other one.
Okay.
It was awful. But I guess now that Ohio State snuck in a lot.
No, I remember it was Pittsburgh because he picked Tennessee to beat Pittsburgh in week 2, and you're like, what are we doing? You just picked Pittsburgh to make it to the national title or the CFP the week prior. What are we doing? There you go. Matt Green, in terms of what happened against LSU on Saturday, I paid the least, like I said, attention to this one. They dropped 50. I think based on what I saw, Georgia could have dropped 70 if they wanted to. In this one, we saw a crazy block field goal. Like, I don't know what it's going to take for LSU to get their special teams in order, but block field goal, they don't do anything with it. They treat it like it's a blocked extra point. I will say, kind of dumb by Chris Smith, where I would have been screaming at him for how long he waited. Like, they blow the whistle, you're getting chewed out. Like, he gave it a lot of time where I was looking at the TV and my gut, I was like, what is he doing? Why is he surrounded? Like, he's really milking this thing to wait for them to all start walking, make it think it's dead, and then pick it up and run.
No, because I think he's the only one thinking about returning it, because I think everyone else is like, this is, get away from it, don't touch it, plays over.
No, I think Georgia knew. There were several Georgia players around the ball.
You saw a lot of guys, because that's just typically what you do when you block it and it goes forward. You just kind of wave your hands off and you stay away from it. But no,
you don't do that for a block field goal. We've always known that.
No, you do. When it goes forward, you don't. The defense doesn't have to touch it.
No, but it didn't go forward. It went back.
No, it went forward. It was like in the end zone. I mean, he returned it like 95 yards. It was almost in the end zone.
Oh, okay.
So I'm saying the defense doesn't ever have to touch that, when it goes forward. So that's why you're just kind of taught, just stay away from it. But obviously, if you can do something with it, like that Georgia Tech Florida State ending a couple years ago when they upset them on with no time left, that's how that play played out. You know what I mean? But it was a huge heads up play. That was actually my green line stat of the week. I don't know if you saw this come up in the broadcast because you say you didn't watch much of this game.
Mm-hmm.
There's been 5 blocked field goals in SEC championship history.
Mm-hmm.
Georgia has 4 of them.
Mm-hmm.
I know Georgia fans are sitting at home. Beamer ball is always a thing. Georgia Bulldogs. Nobody blocks kicks and punts like the Georgia Bulldogs. Every single big game, just about, Georgia blocks a punt or a field goal. Because they've also blocked 2 punts in the SEC championship, too. Back in 2002 and in 2005, they blocked a punt. So 4 blocked field goals, 2 blocked punts in SEC history, and even Kirby in the Rose Bowl, they blocked a field goal. National championship last year blocked a field goal that really kind of led to all the momentum being on Georgia's side in the third quarter of that game. But yeah, and even go back to the 2017 national championship, Tyler Simmons blocked that punt that he was called offsides for that Georgia fans will never forget in the third quarter of that Alabama game. But yeah, Beamer ball is one thing, but Kirby's team's blocking kicks. And it goes back to Mark Richt's teams. I don't know if you remember the 2012, they blocked the field goal. Alec Ogletree returned it to the house. In the SEC championship against Alabama. Back in 2017 against Auburn, Georgia blocked a field goal on that one. It's just blocking kicks, man. It leads to good things for the Georgia Bulldogs.
I wonder how many Terrence Cody had total. I feel like he had at least 2 by himself. Terrence Cody was a difficult man to block.
He definitely had a couple. But yeah, Georgia just jumped out in this one. LSU's got to be discouraged the way this one started because they really were the better team for probably the first quarter of this game. They were moving the ball well on Georgia, but
what were they doing to move the ball well? What were they doing that actually gave Georgia problems?
It's hard to say. I mean, Jaden Daniels was just he was just completing passes, converting third downs. They put together 2 good drives, and Keyshawn Butte's first touchdown, it was just awful tackling. It was just like a 20-yard reception that he turned into like a 50-yard touchdown, making 3 or 4 guys miss. But so LSU played well in the first half, but for Georgia to block the field goal, take it back for a touchdown, and then just the fluky interception that bounced off the LSU receiver's helmet, and then Georgia was able to pick it off, and then it's like, as an LSU fan, you felt like you probably played well, and one play into the second quarter, you're down 21-7, and it's like it's hard to see. And I think they went up 35-7, and because I don't know if you saw, LSU broke the record for passing yards in an SEC championship in this game. So most passing yards ever in an SEC championship. Nussmeier came in because that's Georgia's kryptonite is the backup quarterback coming in. He actually made some plays in this one, but when Georgia's up 35-7, LSU had 160 total yards. After that point, they had almost 400 total yards. So it's hard to call the entire second half of the game garbage time, but Georgia was up 35-10 at half. So they pretty much took care of business. They are the 7th team. I actually want to say 5th team in SEC championship game history to score 50 points. It was a big time performance. Stetson Bennett, I actually said this internally in our family coming into this game. If this guy throws 4 touchdown passes, he's going to the Heisman ceremony. Because we talked about Seth Emerson, and I also looked up the advanced stats of how many guys he had that had been like 20-yard receptions, guys been tackled inside the 2 and stuff. Like if you added on like 4 or 5 touchdowns, I think he's a lock to win the Heisman, honestly. If he's got like 25 touchdowns, just the whole storyline and the formula like we always talk about with the Heisman, like he would fit it. But he did have 4 touchdowns in this game to give him 20 on the season. I feel like 20 is that's a nice number. 20 rushing or 20 passing, 7 rushing on the year. I think that may have done it. Got him to the Heisman ceremony. But I also wanted to make this point. Stetson has played five teams this year that are currently ranked in the top 25. In those 5 games, he's got 13 passing touchdowns, 2 picks, 4 rushing touchdowns, and completing 73% of his passes. So basically the exact opposite of what CJ Stroud has been this year. Like, this guy, he's got 13 of his 20 passing touchdowns on the season in these 5 games against the best teams Georgia's played all year. So I think if they wanted to pad his stats and everything against some of the cupcake teams, I think they could have done that. But I think Georgia, more than any team in the country, just represents the team that needs absolutely 0 style points. So although you did see in this one, although some have said this is by the card, don't know if that's true or not, but with Georgia had 48 in this one, and did you see him run the Philly special to go for 2 and make it an even 50?
I did not.
I don't know if that was something. This is the first time Georgia's beaten LSU. I don't know if that was something he owed LSU from a few years ago, or if this was I don't know, just wanted to score 50. I don't know. It also, someone said the card was when you're up 25, you go for 2 to be up 27. I don't know if that's a real thing. It seems like 26 and 27 are basically the same to me, but I don't know. So Georgia went for 2, up like 48, whatever it was at that point. Seemed odd, but yeah, it was a big time win for the Bulldogs, dropping a 50 spot. It's always a good thing.
Michigan, another second half blowout. They take care of Purdue. This was my upset pick of the week. Braun was undefeated as an unranked team against the top 3 teams. He goes down here. This was close at the half. This was Purdue did what they could to stay in it. But the difference was Will Johnson for me, where he was targeted 7 times, gave up 3 receptions, 15 yards, and 2 picks. Number 2, and then I think Charles Woodson actually tweeted out, like, is that a number 2 for the Wolverines making all these plays, which is pretty cool. But I think he was the story of this.
That's exactly what I thought when I saw number 2 getting picks for Michigan. Yeah, Woodson was my guy. That was like my favorite player ever back in the day.
Matt Green, for the good folks on youtube.com/Chase Thomas Podcast. Some other people in the state of Tennessee might disagree with that here.
I know you guys love Peyton, but Woodson was the man. And then Champ Bailey was like Georgia's version of Woodson, but Woodson was just a baller.
I think Michigan also deserves credit because Blake Corum announced this week out for the year. Just a brutal blow. He would have been in New York, I think, had he not blown out his knee. The kind of season he's had has just been unreal. Donovan Edwards with the one arm or one hand.
So if the injury cost Blake Corum, I'm sorry to interrupt you. If the injury cost Blake Corum his Heisman invite, it's got to cost Hendon Hooker his Heisman invite.
Here's the difference.
Quarterbacks.
Right? Quarterbacks always get benefit of the doubt in this thing. Heisman.
He's missed more time than Blake Corum, though, is he not?
He's only missed 1 game. They both have missed 1 game.
Okay. So I don't know. I don't know. How do you decide?
I'm not saying it's right. Hooker's a definite.
His team won without him. Does that hurt his case?
It was Vanderbilt. I don't know.
I was saying Michigan.
Oh well, maybe. I don't know. I don't know. I just think running backs are treated more harshly. It's already hard enough to get a running back in there these days. I just think they're gonna, if it's a tie, they're going to the quarterback. For right or for wrong. But I did think that they deserve a lot of credit for bouncing back the way they did. They ran the ball all over Purdue in the second half in this one and broke this thing open. But Michigan, they're just taking care of business, and they took care of business in the second half. They played with their food in the first half against Purdue. But I don't know. I still think they're the second best team in the country this year. And look, they have answered the bell. They won the Big Ten back-to-back times for the first time since, I think, 2003 and 2004, which is pretty amazing. Jim Harbaugh deserves all the credit in the world for what he's been able to do. He also had to replace both coordinators coming in this year. People forget that. Josh Gaddis goes to Miami. Mike McDonald goes to Baltimore to join his brother as DC for the Ravens, and they just haven't missed a beat. They lose Aiden Hutchinson early in the draft. They're fine. I don't know. I think Michigan deserves a lot of credit for the kind of season that they've had and doing what they've done. But what was your takeaway from this one, Matt Green?
Yeah, I thought you may have been just crazy like a fox over here, picking Purdue in this one. I thought you were crazy to make that pick, but it was looking good for the first two quarters. But I thought you made a point. I think when we were talking earlier, some questionable field goals. I think in this game for Purdue, just like it felt like they were moving the ball on Michigan, kind of staying in the game. And like, what are you playing for, Purdue? Like you have nothing to lose. Like, why are you getting down inside the 20 and kicking field goals? Like, it was going to take touchdowns to beat Michigan, and it felt like there were then two scores late in this one, like 15-point game kick to make it 12. It's just like, what are we doing here? Like, we gotta score touchdowns here. But yeah, Purdue hung around, but yeah, Michigan is just clearly the superior team. They just kind of wore them down in this one. So it was a good win. I thought Purdue was at least going to cover, but yeah, Michigan pulled away there at the end.
Last big game, Clemson blows out North Carolina. This was your upset of the weekend, was UNC over.
There's an asterisk here, sir. There's an asterisk.
Here we go.
If Dabo would have told me he's playing Cade Klubnik, I'm not picking North Carolina to win this game. Like,
would you not have?
No, I'm just talking shit. But they're a completely different team with Cade Klubnik than they were with DJ Uiagalelei. Like it's pretty easy to say. Like if they make the switch a month ago, like this team's in the playoffs.
Or just the second half of last week. Like
yeah, I mean with one
the
loss,
whole South Carolina game, like
that's fair. Yeah, with just the one loss, but Notre Dame that was in November, right? Like if all of November this guy's the starter, like. They're a playoff
hold on. That's
team.
my question. Do you think if they beat South Carolina based on what we saw this weekend and they blow out UNC the way they do you think they get that fourth spot over Ohio State? I think they do.
100%. Yeah, because especially you can spin this narrative now that with this guy, our team is a lot better and whatever moving forward. I mean, it is a North Carolina team that just lost to NC State and Georgia Tech back-to-back.
But they're also a conference champ, took care of business.
Exactly. They're a one-loss conference champ, and I think that would have been what kind of pushed him forward in that. But yeah, I think Dabo definitely deserves some criticism for staying with DJU as long as he did. But yeah, I was not expecting this sort of offensive performance. I think Klubnik is clearly the guy. You're already hearing DJ in the portal,
which is hilarious because last night we're taking this on a Sunday night. Like, yeah, last night after the game of like, look, I'm just happy. As long as we win, I don't care. And then it's like, this man will not be at the bowl game for the Orange Bowl. This man is already in the portal playing quarterback for Notre Dame next year. Like, what are we doing? Like, none of that matters. It's amazing right after. It's like,
Notre Dame? Is that where he's going to go?
That's always been the rumor all year. Is like, and Drew Pine's in the portal for Notre Dame. Their quarterback.
I figured like West Coast or something, but who knows?
Yeah.
I have no insight.
Maybe UCLA. DTR is gone after this year. Maybe that's But also, he hasn't been good. Who's dying to get DJU?
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. He might just go to one of the lower level Pac-12 schools, like just to be a guaranteed starter somewhere. A JT Daniels type move. Yeah. Obviously, he didn't even say the starter all year, but that was somewhere that he came in and was the clear number one guy.
Go to Oregon.
I don't know.
Is gone.
I was thinking somewhere like, I don't know, Colorado, or maybe they just brought in Dion, but like Arizona or Arizona State or something that just doesn't really have much going
Arizona State's a possibility. They don't have a quarterback. Arizona's going to go with Jaden DeLore again. Who's a better quarterback.
Yeah, I was just throwing teams out.
Well, I just think it's like one of those things when people are talking, I'm like, if you remove the 5-star from his name and you just watch the body of work all season long, you would want no part of the DJU experience. At a certain point, the tape matters.
It's true because I don't know what to make of him, to be honest, because I feel like he was started to come around this season and he started to become more of a weapon with his legs, but I don't know. Maybe just getting him in a better offense. I think a lot of this was Clemson's offense just looked really bad at times. I mean, he did have 22 touchdowns, 7 picks on the year, over 500 yards rushing, 7 touchdowns on the ground. Like, that's not nothing. I feel like part of it's just the 5-star billing and just how good he was supposed to be coming in. But I don't know. There's plenty of places.
Well, I have a question. I have another question for you, Matt Green.
What's that?
This is something I was also thinking about with this. In the pre-immediate availability, era, pre-portal era, do you think Klubnik is starting week 1 or week 3?
What do you mean?
Like, I am convinced the whole year was like he didn't want one of these guys to leave the program in the middle of the year, and he wanted to have DJU as long as humanly possible. And these coaches are terrified of their quarterbacks just dipping. Like Hank Bachmeier dipped early on for Boise, and you're just like, oh crap! Like guys can just leave in the middle of the year. Like talented players, if you get on, like you have to just walk this tightrope with these guys that like they'll play immediately somewhere else. So you're just having to be very careful with how you manage these quarterback rooms and these quarterback controversies that, like, I think if DJ had to sit out, if he had to transfer somewhere else, I think he would have pulled the plug way early. I think he pulls the plug immediately on Cade.
See, I wouldn't say that because you think about it, it's just kind of the benefit of hindsight. Like, they just lost to South Carolina. Like, that shocked everybody.
Well, I mean, DJU's been bad all year.
No, that's true. But even with that, like they still were. What, they lose 31-30 to South Carolina? They're very close to going 11-1 with him as the starter and being in a position to make the playoff. And maybe the ACC championship still plays out the way it does, and you go with Klubnik. But it's like there wasn't this I feel like head coaches are just so hesitant to remove the starting quarterback. Like that's the guy you're winning with, you're having success with. Like once you bench the starter, it just opens up a whole thing. And
might leave immediately is the thing. Is what I'm saying. Is you can leave the program immediately, and then you have no backup.
It's possible, but I think that a lot of that depends on the culture you got in your program. Like I think that's kind of an overrated kind of fear people have. Like
well, what do you think is going to happen next year, right? Like Nico's coming in. Nico is going to start at some point next year. Joe Milton, it's just I don't think it's ever happening. I don't think it's Joe Milton should be the closer, where Joe Milton comes in the late fourth and blowouts and just throws 70-yard bombs and is able to do whatever he wants to do. But they're going to give him the starting job for the first couple of weeks next year. And Nico's just going to be sitting there, and like Nico's going to be better. The fans are going to be like, "Why? What are we doing? Are we really going to?"
No one is ever just given the job. Like,
no, what I'm saying is like they're going to be careful because he doesn't want to lose him to the portal for nothing. Like Joe Milton might just walk if you pull the job from him. He's not going to sit like he did for Hooker last year.
And I don't think you can allow players to have that sort of power.
But that's what's going to happen. Is what I'm saying.
And I think that's just it's going to happen if you allow it to happen. Like you just every team has to have just a good enough culture to where like guys aren't just handed the job. Every position is earned. Like,
well, no, what I'm saying is there's no protection of if the better player, like you can just leave in the middle of the year. Like that is just like.
But you're never going to be able to leave. You can always leave in the middle of the year. Jalen Hurd left in the middle of the year, right? Like that kind of stuff is just freaky. It just happens. Like you can't just go be playing for Tennessee in week 3 and then be playing at South Carolina in week 8.
You can just sit for the rest of the year. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, you can sit for the rest of the year, but why would you do that? Like that's not going to do anything.
Just did it.
That's not going to do anything good for you in terms of your stock on going to a new place. And that's going to happen sometimes. Like guys have quit teams for years. Like that's never going to see it more and more.
I think we're going to see it more and more.
But I think the fact that you can't just be immediately eligible to play somewhere else, I don't think it's going to be some
they'll just go work with their quarterback
epidemic.
Coach, their private quarterback guru, and just be like, all right, peace out. Rest of the year, I'll be in the portal and I'll see my new team in 4 months, whatever it is.
Yeah, you can do that, sure, but I don't see any advantage in doing that. Like you're way better off to be the backup somewhere, and who knows, the starter gets hurt and you get a couple more reps, right. And then you show a team what you can do, and then you go somewhere else in the off season. But if you want to quit mid-season, that's nothing's ever been preventing a player from quitting mid-season.
I'm just very curious to see how the Milton to Nico transition goes. We haven't seen it. These transitions, I think, are just going to be really, really complicated for a lot of these jobs all around the country. At the quarterback spot, primarily. Matt Green, quickly on the group of 5, we had North Texas get blown out against UTSA. UTSA wins the Conference USA belt. Toledo takes care of business against Ohio in the MAC championship. You get Coastal.
Bobcats still haven't won it.
still have not won it. Troy takes care of business. The little juggernaut down there in Troy, Alabama, blows out Coastal. That game was never closed. Tulane blows out UCF. Willie Fritz stays around. That probably had a big part in that team being really motivated. Their coach does not end up getting the Georgia Tech job, so they blow out UCF. But then the Boise Fresno, there was some weird stuff in this one. Punt return touchdown. That was a surprising game, but by and large a fun weekend nonetheless. Fresno State big win. They finished 9-4. Jeff Tedford, man, just rocking and rolling year over year for the Bulldogs. So good by them. Matt Green, we did it. Another season in the books, sir. It's been a wild and full ride, if you will.
The season is far from over.
Well, the regular season's over. We're now in bowl season. We're in opt-out season. We're in who's playing quarterback for who season. And then we'll have the playoff in, 2 weeks? Semifinals in what?
It's in like 4 weeks.
Is it 4?
It's New Year's Eve.
Oh, I guess I thought it was later in the year than this. Okay, it's the 5th. I thought it was later. I'm already adding up. I think it's because I graduate in the middle of this month, and it feels like because I just finished up one of my classes that I'm just right there. Yeah, because we still have a long way to go.
It's a good one because I'm going to start a petition of bowl season. We need to have games still on Saturdays. Mm-hmm. Like, I know it's never going to happen because these TV networks, they love it. ESPN wants people just watching their network randomly on a Tuesday night and Wednesday and Thursday on December 27th and watching the Meineke Car Care Bowl on December 26th and all that random stuff. But it's just so weird when you're playing late in the year and you're playing on like a Wednesday, Friday night or something. New Year's Eve being on a Saturday, I feel like it's gonna feel like a Saturday. It's gonna be a long day though. Wait until that 8:00 Georgia Ohio State after the TCU Michigan at 4. It's gonna be a long one, but I'm not sure it'll be over by midnight, to be honest, with the way these games last now.
Yeah, I would have my doubts. Hope to experience that at some point in the future. That'd be nice. I like to experience a Tennessee CFP going into.
Well, they're making it so that everyone gets a trophy now, and everyone gets in the playoff. So you don't even have to earn getting in the playoff anymore. So I'm sure Tennessee fans will see it soon enough.
Nico in the expanded playoff in the first year of it. Who says no? Nico Ia Maliaba, who will be on campus very soon for the bowl workouts. A lot of big-time talent coming into the University of Tennessee to get acclimated, ready to go to beat the Dogs in Neyland next fall. Matt Green, thank you as always, my friend. It has been a pleasure doing another college football season with you. Like you said, we still got the bowl season, coaching moves, transfer portal news to talk about in the coming weeks, but this will do it for our regular season pods here on the Chase Thomas Podcast, the full ride here on the Chase Thomas Podcast. So we appreciate you guys following along each and every week. It's been fun, and I know it's our most popular show here on the podcast. So appreciate y'all's support and all that good stuff as we keep this thing moving. So Matt Green, unless you have anything else to add, I will talk to you next week.
Chase Thomas, that's all I got, sir.